my bread and butter is residential 4 units and below long term. I just love those. In fact, when I started investing in 2006, there wasn't short-term property managers. Now, there were a little bit of short-terms here and there, but people would have to do it themselves. It wasn't really until like 2020 into 2021 that property managers really started exploding. Maybe a little before that, like 2019. But before that, there weren't any property managers. And I am a passive income type of guy. I didn't want to buy a house that I would have to manage to make money. I just wanted long-term. So now, short terms are great because there's so many amazing property managers. The system's known now. People know how to do it, and property managers are out there. So started single-family home, buying property after property. Lived in California at the time in 2006, but bought in Ohio because prices in California were just crazy. You couldn't rent to make passive income. Bought in Ohio. And since then, now invest in Ohio, Texas, Arizona, Indiana, and Tennessee. I think there's one more state, but let's just stick with those. But 30 plus rental properties right now, single family homes. I only have one short-term property because I was always like, I just love long-term because in long-term, it's so little headaches and I make money. But then I thought, you know what? Let's look at doing a short-term property because Kirby's doing a fantastic job. He's got over 30 listings, which is just mind-blowing to me. I was like, Kirby's making a crap load more money than me. I better start working on my short-term game. But 30 plus long-term. Then I have one short-term property, which is doing amazing, by the way. And I was like, so I'm in Murfreesboro, right out of Nashville, about 30 minutes away from Nashville, but it's doing really, really well. And then, so 30 plus properties plus the short-term one property. Then I've invested in some hotels. So I have some hotels, which I've always loved Monopoly growing up. And so this was a chance to play Monopoly in real life, getting all the way to hotels. So I checked and got that. And then, remember, the very first thing that I said was getting around the awesome people and helping all of us helping each other out. So because of my conference, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, which you've spoken at all the time. I mean, I don't think it would be the same if you weren't there every year. But
Thank you.
I also met some friends there. They've spoken every year. And it was about a year ago, they said, hey, Dustin, we think that you would be great at being a partner on these multifamily big apartment complexes. I was like, yeah, that'd be great as long as there's a good deal because I'm not a syndicator. And so for everybody listening, a syndicator, what they basically are is they're salesmen. They're not going to like that I said that, but this is the absolute truth because I'm not a syndicator. They are salesmen. Somebody else, an investor like me or Kirby, gets a deal. And these people, they're good people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're bad at all, but I just want to understand the perspective of what the syndicators do. They then go out, take that deal that Kirby or I have, and they go find other people to invest in that deal. And they, the syndicator, get a portion of it. It's not a bad business model at all. It's not. But at the same time, that's what they are, a salesman. And I decided, because I'm an investor, if I'm going to invest in something, I better believe in it. Wholeheartedly believe in it, and I'm going to be buying into it. So fast forward. Friends of mine who are only in the multifamily space, they love multifamily, huge apartment complexes. I think they have like 2,000 units all together. They approached me and said, hey, Dustin, we want you to be a part of the asset management, which means ongoing, just making sure the properties, management's doing great. We're fixing it up, the property, getting better insurance, all that sort of stuff. And we want you to help raise capital, which is the number one thing that any big deal needs. Is access to capital to buy the property. And so I was really blessed to be a part of it. 355 units in the same city, literally a 5-minute drive, 1.5 miles away from the Airbnb I bought. So I'm fully bought into this area.
Nice.
Beautiful area. Yeah. Middle Tennessee State is there. But anyways, 355 units. I raised 1.5 million from just my podcast and sending out a couple emails, which was really, I was excited. I was like, man, that's great. But it was because I was around awesome people. These awesome people that are my general partners with me, they are known as buyers of real estate, buyers of apartment complexes. So there was a distressed seller in Tennessee. They were distressed. They had another property that they needed to offload, or this property they needed to offload because they had another project they needed money for. Well, we bought it for 60 cents on the dollar, basically 60% of the market value because they needed to close quick. And they went to the realtor and said, who do you know that closes properties really quick that can raise this much money? Well, they went to my partners, the friends of mine that spoke at RubeCon. They brought it to them. Then they brought me on. Fast forward. It's all about being around the right people and having the right people look at you as somebody they want to either potentially work with or help out. And that's the reason why, for me, I just love how do we get as many people together, because we all win when we all work together. But yes, so that's my the big picture of my portfolio: 30 plus properties, one short term, hotels, and now 355 unit apartment complex.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. One thing you're like really good at is getting people together. And I think a lot of people get ideas like, oh, it'd be great to have a conference, where all my friends come together and speak, and, there's all this learning opportunity. But then they're like, the next breath or the next thought is like, well, that's a lot of work. And what if it doesn't work? And all that. You tend to not have that second thought. It feels like to me, you're just like, yeah, there's probably going to be problems, but we'll just figure it out as we go. And, you put it together, and it's worked out amazingly. But a deal like that you just described is a result of bringing people together, of being in that room with other really smart people who have access to deals like that. And so I guess what about that deal? Obviously the numbers made sense, but you said you've bought into Murfreesboro. Why do you think that's a good market?
Great question. So, number one, the friends of mine that I'm investing with, met them through RubeCon, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. They're a part of me as I'm doing the RubeCon multifamily, which is all about commercial real estate investing. So they live there. They live in that. They actually moved from New York to Tennessee because they were building a big portfolio there, and they started buying there, and they really loved it. So they moved out of New York, and then they said, Dustin, you need to move out here. This place is fantastic. I'm like, okay, we'll see. So I went and visited, which was a lot of fun. But then I saw how terrific it is out there, just down to earth people, which I love. I moved from California to Arizona. I lived in Arizona for about 7 years. Now moving to Tennessee eventually. But all that to say, the reason why Murfreesboro is because it's outside of a huge area, which is Nashville, a huge city, which is Nashville. I mean, oh my goodness, if you want to buy a short-term property there, like an Airbnb, a condo, I mean, you're going to be spending 600 grand, maybe more for that. And it's not going to be making you that much money. But 25 minutes out of Nashville is Murfreesboro. We get booked up all month long, basically, because we are in a great area. Very few, like the inventory or amount of short-term properties are much lower. So for my short-term properties, doing great. And the apartment complex too, it's because my friends who already own, I think 1,500 in that area. They also have other apartments in other cities, but they have 1,500 units in Murfreesboro. So economies of scale is really, really huge. They have one property manager that's only charging like maybe 3.5% per unit to manage all the properties. So that's the big reason why Murfreesboro is they've been in there for last, 7 or 8 years. And then with me seeing it's outside of Nashville, people still, like you always say, hey, people still have weddings. People still have deaths and funerals, and they have graduations and vacations. Like, people travel everywhere. So if you're able to find a good property, then it's going to do well, as opposed to Orlando, where you're going to pay up way overpriced, and still, if you buy in these better areas, you're still going to make good money. Now, one quick last thing I'll say. The reason also why I picked Murfreesboro for my short-term property is eventually my wife and I want to move out to Tennessee from Arizona. So I thought, I want to move to Tennessee, but I'm a West Coast guy. I've never lived on the East Coast. I might not like it. It's my southern east area. I might not like it. So I'm going to leave my house. We're going to do midterm rental in my house in Arizona, move to Tennessee and see if I like it. But I knew I was not going to buy a home that's going to be a permanent house. I said, I might not like it. So I bought in an area that I know would be a good investment property. So the house we bought is an Airbnb. In end of November, after our conference in November, my family and I, we're going to move all the way to Tennessee and live in Tennessee for at least a year. See if we like it. We might find a better area that we're going to buy another house and build or something. You get a lot of land. I love having land, or I want to have land. But then leave this property, the new one in Tennessee, as a short-term property. So I bought it as an investment to move there to see if I like it. And if I don't, I'll move back to Arizona and go back to the house I lived in. Or we will like it, and then we'll buy another house and then keep this. But the idea was test it out, see if I like Tennessee, then move into it. But I already know it's a producing asset, this short-term property, because it's already making me money.
That's so smart. Yeah, so many people think with their emotions first, and then they don't think about the actual numbers. And so you can still check the boxes on all the things that you want and need personally in a home, but then just kind of qualify that into a property that works, from an investment standpoint as well. So that way, you're never in a position where all of a sudden, I'm in this house I can't afford or anything like that. It's always going to be a great investment long term. So that's super smart. So I guess if you could kind of share a little bit more about this 355 unit deal, what is the metrics that you were looking at there to see, like, or to decide, yeah, this is a deal that I want to do? Like, would you guys buy it for? What are you projecting on it, and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So there are a few criteria for me to become I guess, a partner in any large apartment complex, and a number of different key criteria. I'm going to give you the big principles, and there's a lot of underwriting things, which is like the numbers. I'm not a numbers person at all. I see spreadsheets that I run. I'm like, okay, just give me the bottom line. But there are principles that I use when I buy any property, even a 355 unit apartment complex. So just like you, Kirby, I try to make sure that I make money when I buy the property. Well, what does that mean? Capturing equity. So this one property, like I said, the sellers had a project that they needed money for, so they need to sell this one. They bought it. They've had it for like 15 years. So they doubled their money, and we got it for 60% of what the market value was. Now, they could go to market and make more money, but they didn't have the time. So I love buying distressed properties, not like dilapidated. Those are fine too, don't get me wrong. But when I say distressed, the seller is motivated to sell at what a price that they normally wouldn't. So this property was 60% of the market value. So the total purchase price was $32 million. We raised $12 million for it, the three partners and myself. And so that's one, is we capture equity when we bought it. So we captured 40% equity, right? I mean, even if it had to fire sale it, we'd like, okay, let's just get out from under. We're going to make money. So that's number one. Number two, cash flow. So we don't get into a property unless we make money. But then we also don't buy the property unless we're making cash flow. We're making money right when we start buying it. Now, if it's rented already, like this apartment complex is, then that's fantastic. So I look at, am I going to be making money? And on this 355 unit apartment complex, so the property, and so here's a little bit nuance too. When it comes to commercial properties, more to learn. That's why we have the Rubicon multifamily, because it's not as simple as a single family home. That's so simple. It's really, really simple. There's other things like, as you know, if you're having short-term properties, occupancy. Is it occupied more than it's not? So I look at the occupancy of this property. Well, is there also a value add? So when I look at occupancy, I'm looking at, is it rented, like all the units, is it like 90% or above? If it's below 90%, then there's a value add, which means we fix it up, we make it better, and we make it worth more. This property itself, there was two things. Number one, they were about 96 to 97% occupied, which they were really, really good. Wow. That's a really good, that's really good occupancy. We will try to get up to 98%, like just a little bit more, which would be great. But you never really want to be 100% because then you're not charging market rents. Like people are just staying in there and you're not making the money you should. So occupancy, you want to make sure that's up. But then also value add. I like, and same thing with a short-term property or single family home, forced depreciation. That's what value add basically means, is you put money into it. Let's say you put the single family home, let's say you put in $20,000 to fix it up, but then it's worth $50,000 more total. So you made 30 grand by fixing it up. Same exact thing. So these are principles that for any property, you just have to have a little nuance for each type of property that you're going to be buying. So that's what I also look for. Can we put money into it to make the property worth more, but can we also get the rents up? Can we increase the rents? So far, if you track with everything I've shared, this one property, check. All these different things that are in my brain of what I need, we're checking off. And then here's another excellent thing on top of that, was two other last quick things: the loan or the debt that we're going to take on the property, and the other one, expenses. So I'll get to the debt in just a second, but quickly say the expenses. I knew that we could lower the expenses on the property because my partners already had a great property management. We're going to go from, like, they were paying 4%. We're going to go down, like, I think 3.5%, which is great. We also have a lot of other ways to decrease the expenses. So that's going to increase our income. And then the last one is debt. Now, when you have a single family home, that's totally different type of debt or loans than a commercial property. Commercial properties, they are only 3 to 5, maybe 7 year loans. And then you have to refinance it or sell it because it's a business loan. Now, a 30-year fixed single family home is by far the absolute, my favorite, the best, because your mortgage doesn't go up. And after 30 years, it's paid off. Commercial loans are not. So here's one thing that I will say and finish on the debt or the loan part. A lot of people that are syndicators, remember the syndicators, the salesmen I told you about, they're actually having a lot of problems right now because the way the syndication works is it's a model where they buy it at a certain price and then they hope another syndicator is going to come on top and buy it for more 3 years later. So they make money. Then another syndicator come on top and buy it for more 3 years later. And then another, and eventually somebody's left holding the bag. So there's a guy named Brandon Turner. He was formerly of Bigger Pockets on a podcast or doing the podcast. Well, he has literally stopped all distributions on his syndications. You know, people invest their money. Let's say somebody puts $100,000. They're hoping to get 7-8% return a year. Well, he's literally stopped that. And he's not the only one. Lots of syndicators have stopped distributions, which means they're not paying out investments. And a lot of them are doing capital calls, which means they're going back to their investors and saying, hey, investor, if you want to stay at your same equity, you got to put more money in. Here's the reason why. They're losing money. Just like if you started a business selling candy bars and all of a sudden your expenses are too high and you're not making money, well, you got to put money into the business to make sure it keeps running. Same thing with syndications. And so I'm seeing like Brandon Turner stopping distributions, lots of companies doing capital calls. I wanted to make sure, because remember, I'm not a syndicator. This is an investment for me. I want to check off every single one of these boxes. So anytime I get into a deal for myself, or if I'm partnering with somebody else, I make sure these boxes are checked off, because the last thing I want is money coming out of my pocket. We don't get investments for that. So when I boil everything down, this was literally like, if I would say that there was like in baseball, base hits, great. Just like if you get a single family home, you do an Airbnb and you're making $500 a month. That's a good single, you know, $500 a month, a good single. Then a double, you know, gets better and better. So for the multifamily, 355 units, this is literally a grand slam. That's why I was like, I'm so on board, because it checked off every single, I mean, $32 million that we're buying it for. We captured 40% equity. That's a lot of money. Also, one quick last thing on the debt. We got a 7-year loan. Normally it's 3 to 5 years. We have a 7-year Fannie Mae loan, which is really, really good. We underwrote it, which means we ran all the numbers at 6.18% interest rate. On $32 million, that's a lot of money. We actually closed and we got a better interest rate, 5.81. At $32 million, that's a lot of money saved. So like I said, exactly, it's a grand slam.